Hey, what is up, mortals? It is JSatwekar here, and before we get into today's video, there's something I'd like to say. I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 500 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this What If. Thirdly, if you didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us, so please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the story. Nervously, the students looked at the forest. As the class entered the forest, they noticed that the forest was eerily silent. The ground shook as something large approached the students. As Uraraka nervously walked forward, a nearby tree was knocked over. Izuku activated his quirk and charged at whatever was responsible for knocking down the tree. Before anyone else could react, the earth started to take on the forms of large animals. The green-haired boy looked at the creature as it turned its head towards him. His blood started to run cold as his mind started to play tricks on him. Borealis thought he saw a Nomu hiding in the creature's mouth. Seeing his friend freeze up, Ida activated One for All at 20%. His body started to emit white lightning as the blue-haired boy ran towards his friend. In one swift motion, the class president grabbed his green-haired friend and dashed away from the creature as Katsuki blew up the earth the creature was made of. "Midoriya, get a hold of yourself." "Bakugo, Midoriya froze up for some reason," Ida said as he started to panic. "Damn it, Borealis, I thought you said you were fine," the atomic blonde growled. "Hey, Four Eyes, make sure his breathing is normal. He's having an anxiety attack. After the sports festival, he thinks he sees Nomus coming after him." "Midoriya, you should have told us. Nomu haven't been spotted since the sports festival," Ida said as he tried to comfort his friend. "You're fine. Just relax and take a deep, slow breath." Izuku was trying to remind himself that the sports festival was over. The green-haired boy's breathing started getting faster and faster. Within moments, he began to hyperventilate. As Borealis was losing consciousness, he imagined a Nomu trying to punch him in the face. The blue-haired boy with glasses watched helplessly as his friend passed out. "Bakugo, Midoriya passed out. What do we do next?" Ida said as he felt helpless and useless. "Uraraka, make Midoriya weightless so we can move him easily. Hopefully he wakes up quickly, and then we can get revenge on the extra that did this." Katsuki grumbled in frustration as he exploded another earth monster. "Damn it. If only I'd been able to help you at the sports festival." "Are you sure it's an anxiety attack?" the blue-haired boy asked with concern. "Wouldn't it be post-traumatic stress if it's related to the sports festival?" "Do I look like a doctor, Four Eyes? All I know is that it takes Borealis forever to fall asleep now," the blonde boy grumbled. The ground started to shake as more earth beasts showed up. Without anyone realizing it, the class was divided into groups. Minutes started to pass as Ida, Uraraka, and Katsuki defended their friend from the creatures that kept attacking them. Izuku's eyes started to flutter as he regained consciousness. The first thing he heard was his long-haired friend firing off explosions repeatedly. Borealis then heard the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. When he was able to focus his eyes, he noticed several creatures made out of earth floating in the sky. Izuku remembered what their new hero studies teacher told them. The emerald-eyed boy shoved his fears to the side and activated his quirk. A faint sound of thunder could be heard. Izuku attacked the nearest earth creature and destroyed its left front leg. His blue-haired friend struck the beast in its head with a 20% straight right punch. "Hey, Deku, are you all right?" his brown-haired friend asked, sounding concerned. "I'm fine, Uraraka. It was just anxiety," the green-haired boy said, sounding more nervous than usual as he forced a smile on his face. "Oi, nerd, we're your friends. If you need help, just ask," the spiky-haired boy shouted as he set off another explosion. "Die, you bastard!" he screamed at the earth creature. "Bakugo, that language is highly inappropriate. Such language is very unheroic," the boy with glasses scolded his fellow classmate. "Midoriya, you can talk to us." "I don't need help, Ida. I'm perfectly fine. Why don't any of you believe me?" Borealis complained as he tried to convince himself that he was fine. "Because we know you're not fine. Stop lying. We were there when you admitted to mind control that you were having nightmares. Katsuki growled at his childhood friend. Just let it out. It's clear there's more to your nightmares than just your fear of what happened at the sports festival. The green-haired boy opened his mouth to say something before closing it again. Borealis charged at another earth beast and destroyed its front legs. As Izuku started to increase the output of his quirk, the sound of the thunder got louder. His mind started to focus on the fact that the creatures he was fighting were made from earth. For some reason, the quirk felt familiar to him. It was almost like Izuku knew the quirk, but couldn't quite place where he'd heard of it. At that moment, Izuku noticed the lack of police sirens or heroes coming to help them. The Emerald Eye Boy stopped as he remembered his homeroom teacher's uncharacteristic display of emotion. It suddenly occurred to him that Aizawa decided to give the students some practical training to handle the next surprise villain attack. Izuku found it annoying that he couldn't remember who had an Earth-type quirk. Kachan, this is training. Aizawa-sensei had someone throw us off of the mountain road, Izuku said, sounding excited. Training camp must have started the moment we stepped off the bus. Wouldn't this type of training leave us terrified or paranoid about getting ambushed? The atomic blonde grumbled in frustration. Sensei might not care at this point. All of us are scarred for life anyway, Ida said as he reflected on the events that had taken place. Maybe we should use this time to train our quirks. With everything that's been happening, we haven't focused on improving our quirks. How long do you think it's going to take us to get to the training camp? Uraraka asked in wonder. Ida will disable the creatures. You used your quirk to destroy them, Izuku muttered happily. Very well, Ida said as his friends started to relax. The green-haired boy started going after the legs of the monsters. The blue-haired boy would then destroy the head of the creature. The brown-haired girl would make the earth creatures float by touching them. The atomic blonde would then send an explosion at the monsters, destroying them. As the group was falling into a rhythm of destroying the earth monsters, the appearance of the monsters changed. Instead of walking, the monsters started flying. This forced the group of friends to rethink their strategy. All four groaned as they saw a group of 4 earth creatures start to dive-bomb them. Katsuki started to release several explosions aimed at destroying the dive-bombing beasts. How is this training? The emerald-eyed boy muttered in confusion. Hey, nerd! Do you have any idea who's doing this? Ground Zero shouted so he could be heard over the explosions. The quirk seems familiar, but I just can't place it. I remember hearing about... Borealis trailed off as he had a sudden epiphany. Now I remember! Midoriya, who's responsible for this? The blue-haired boy said in exasperation. Bakugo, any ideas on how to get Midoriya to stop dragging this out? It took you long enough to figure it out, the blonde-haired boy grumbled in annoyance. Kachan, the past few months were disorienting with the villain attacks, the green-haired boy muttered. I think it's pro-hero Pixie Bob. Her quirk would allow her to do this. Why would a hero who specializes in rescue do this? Uraraka asked, feeling extremely confused. Situational awareness, I think. A hero might have to fight a villain while rescuing people, Borealis muttered as he started to analyze the situation. There was the sports festival, so UA might have reached out to them so we could train in a more secluded spot. Most of us haven't had the chance to push our quirks to their limits. Nerd, you better make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings, the atomic blonde growled as more earth beasts appeared. Another 4 earth beasts started to dive-bomb the group, while another 3 approached on foot. Katsuki released a massive explosion to destroy the dive-bombing beasts. The repeated explosions caused his arms to ache. His blue-haired friend was also showing signs of fatigue. By this point, Ida was running low on the fuel for his quirk. The class president was using One for All exclusively to preserve the small amount of fuel he had left. Borealis was slowly starting to dehydrate from the constant use of his quirk, and he couldn't rehydrate because he had left his water bottle on the bus. Their brown-haired friend stopped at a nearby tree and began to vomit from overusing her quirk. When she looked up, an earthen monster was towering over her. Katsuki stared in surprise as he couldn't figure out a way to protect his friend. Ida was about to activate his engine quirk when he hesitated. The earth beast's fist was about to pulverize Uraraka. As Izuku saw his friend about to be crushed by the earth monster, time seemed to slow down for him because of the adrenaline coursing through his body. Borealis seemed to imagine himself running over to his friend and moving her out of the way. At that moment, the adrenaline in his body pushed his quirk beyond anything he had ever done before. A burst of ionized air surrounded his palm for an instant as his quirk went plus ultra. His body was already moving when his quirk activated. Izuku kept seeing the path he needed to take to save his friend. The initial burst of energy started to burn his hands as it briefly exceeded his heat resistance. In a flash of green light, Borealis moved his friend out of harm's way. The impact of the Earth Beast's fist on the ground sent enough dust into the air to force his two friends to close their eyes. Uraraka closed her eyes and waited for the fatal blow to strike her, but suddenly she felt herself flying through the air. When she opened her eyes, Uraraka noticed that she was to the left of the Earth Beast. Her green-haired friend was on his knees to her left, panting. The sleeves of his shirt were smoldering from the overuse of his quirk. Her blue-haired friend quickly destroyed the beast and ran to join them. "Deku, are you okay?" the brown-haired girl asked as she started examining him for injuries. "Uraraka, I'm fine. I'm just glad I was able to make it in time," Izuku muttered shyly as he tried to hide his hands from her. "Deku, did you overuse your quirk again? You're turning red," the zero-gravity girl inquired as she noticed his face. "I'm fine, Uraraka. I need to let my body temperature decrease before I use my quirk again," the green-haired boy muttered as he continued to hide his hands. His blonde-haired friend growled demandingly as he walked over to them. "Kacchan, I'm fine. I just need to relax for a bit," Borealis said as he tried to hide his hands from his childhood friend. At that moment, Uraraka was able to catch a glimpse of Izuku's left hand and began to doubt that Izuku was fine. Her friend was still trying to prevent anyone from seeing his hands. Ida ended the debate by using 5% of One for All and grabbing his green-haired friend's right arm. "Midoriya, stop lying. We know you pushed yourself beyond your limit," Ida exasperatedly said as he exposed his friend's burned right hand. "I noticed that you were starting to burn just before Uraraka needed to take a break." "This better be the last of those damn things," Ground Zero grumbled as he blasted the last remaining Earth Beast to pieces. His friends nodded in agreement as they continued walking in the direction their teacher had indicated. The group noticed that the Earth Beasts slowly started to dwindle in numbers. By this point, Ida had run out of fuel for his quirk and was relying solely on the power of One for All. Katsuki was busy rubbing his aching right arm with his left hand. Uraraka looked like she was getting ready to pass out. Izuku was trying to keep both hands open to avoid aggravating the burns on the palms of his hands. The class president was the first to notice they were getting closer to a series of buildings in the forest. A short distance away, they heard their other classmates approaching the area as well. Despite how short the trek was from where they got off the bus, the sun was starting to set as they arrived at the training center. "Guys, we're almost there. I think I hear Sensei talking with someone just up ahead," the green-haired boy said as he tried to catch his breath. "At least we know we went in the right direction." "They better have a good explanation for putting us through this," the blonde-haired boy grumbled as they heard some students from Class 1B approaching them. "Regardless, this shows just how far I have to go before I'm strong enough to protect my friends." "I'm just glad those Earth Beasts stopped harassing us. I can barely move my hands now," Izuku muttered, feeling exhausted. "Don't overuse your quirk next time. We would have taken a break so you could cool down if we had known," Ida tiredly said, trying to avoid an argument he was too tired for. "I need to get better at using All Might's quirk." "Ida, it's your quirk now. All Might chose to pass it to you," the green-haired boy said in frustration. "You have to make it your own quirk." "Deku is right. All Might must have felt you were the best fit for his quirk," Uraraka agreed as she sluggishly moved forward. "You're definitely strong enough to handle the power behind the quirk. Even Gran Torino said it was your quirk." "Then why doesn't it feel like it's my quirk?" Ida asked, sounding exhausted. "Four Eyes, it's because you refuse to treat it as your own quirk. You still treat it like it's a special move," Katsuki grumbled in annoyance. "Prove All Might right by mastering the quirk." "Thank you, Bakugo. I will make it my own, Ida said with determination in his eyes. The 4 students were the first ones to arrive at the clearing where the teachers were waiting. As the sun slowly started sinking below the horizon, the rest of Class 1A and Class 1B began to show up as well. They only relaxed after both teachers verified that all the students had arrived safely. After treating any injuries the students received during the fight, Class 1A's teacher called them over to him. Well done. You made it here in a reasonable amount of time considering the amount of training you've received. We made the arrival training harder than normal because of how strong you guys are, Aizawa said in a monotonous voice. However, you have a long way to go. Pro heroes would have made it here in time for lunch. Did you really need to tell us that, you bastard? Katsuki growled angrily. That is a highly inappropriate way to talk to our teacher, Bakugo, Ida scolded the blonde-haired boy. After what we went through, I'll talk to him however I want. The atomic blonde grumbled stubbornly. Before we head to dinner, follow me so I can explain the reason why we are training here, the sleep-deprived teacher said, ignoring the comments. The black-haired teacher started to walk towards a secluded area behind a plain building with his class following slowly behind him. Uraraka, still weak from the fight with the earth beasts, was leaning on izuku for support. Once they arrived at a wide-open space, the teacher picked up a baseball that had been lying on the ground. Due to your strength, we increased the number of earth beasts you had to fight by a factor of 10. We also had them attack you in a variety of ways to push you to your limits, the pro hero said tiredly. We will be working on your quirks for the duration of this training camp. Sir, wasn't that what we were doing at UA until now? Izuku asked, intrigued. At UA, we were training your bodies. We weren't focusing on your quirks, Eraserhead said in a matter-of-fact tone as he tossed the ball to Katsuki. Bakugo, throw that ball again. Make sure to use your quirk when you throw the ball. The class started to mutter amongst themselves. Some of the class assumed that the atomic blonde could easily break 1,200 meters when he threw the ball. The green-haired boy assumed that there was something more to the test. His friend hadn't focused on condensing his explosions. Knowing this, Borealis assumed his friend would throw the ball about 1,000 meters. Katsuki released an explosion just after he threw the ball. Die! The blonde-haired boy shouted as he threw the ball. The ball sailed high into the air and quickly went out of sight. With the sun having fully set, it was hard to judge exactly how far the ball traveled through the air. The sleep-deprived teacher looked at his phone and saw the score going up. The number went up rapidly for a few seconds, before slowing down. Once the number stopped, Aizawa turned the device towards everyone. The display showed the ball traveled an even 900 meters. The class started muttering to each other in shock. The score had barely improved since the beginning of the year. It was almost as if their hard work was barely paying off. The other thing that surprised them was that their teacher simply kept standing there, like he had all the time in the world. The training here is specifically designed to push your quirk to its limit. We have designed this training with that in mind, the sleep-deprived man said. Today was the last free day you will have, he said sardonically. Turning to walk away, Aizawa added, After tonight, you will have to do everything yourselves, including cooking your own meals. The students of 1A started following their teacher in shock. Everyone was feeling exhausted from fighting the earth beasts and the trek to get to the campgrounds. 1A ate their dinner without their usual energy. Unbeknownst to the people at the training camp, a group of people were starting to arrive in the forest. A man in jeans and a top hat was observing the activities using a pair of binoculars. As the man lowered the binoculars from his face, a massive scar could be seen on the left side of his face. His left eye had been replaced by a prosthetic eye. His blonde hair was being blown around by the wind. A young girl with blonde hair was standing next to him playing with a knife. She was wearing a schoolgirl's outfit. However, despite her smile, she cautiously watched the man she was standing next to. The guy licked his lips as he thought about what would happen in 2 days' time. Over the next 2 days, the training left the students feeling drained. Izuku and Ida were paired up during training. An obstacle course was set up for them when they arrived at the base of the mountain they were training at. Ida was instructed to follow the obstacle course in a counterclockwise fashion. Borealis was informed that he had to follow the obstacle course in a clockwise fashion. Each time they passed each other, they had to transfer a baton they were given to the other person. Aizawa instructed both students to run their fastest without going beyond their limits. The first obstacle Borealis came to only had a few places to step safely. However, each of those places had a slippery substance applied to it. To make matters more difficult, there were logs swinging between each foothold. There was a 2-meter gap between each landing space, and each landing space consisted of a poorly balanced stone. If either one of them failed to do the obstacle properly, they would have to restart the obstacle course from the beginning. The second obstacle Borealis encountered was ice-covered ground. If he slid off the icy path, he would have to restart. Balls were constantly being shot across the ice. The ice was 2 meters wide and 10 meters long. There were different sized balls being shot out at different intervals. The third obstacle was a curved path around the mountain. The difficulty lay in the fact that spikes would randomly rise out of the ground. The final obstacle the green-haired boy had to deal with was running across a narrow path with rocks constantly falling on it. The first time the boys ran around the course, obstacles were easy to deal with, so they met at the midpoint between their second and third obstacles. However, as time went on, both Izuku and Ida slowed down as they began to tire. It didn't help that Gran Torino had instructed Ida to only use his engine quirk. On the fourth lap, the blue-haired boy failed on the last obstacle 3 times. The class president kept mistiming his jumps, and the logs would slam into him as he jumped. Borealis had issues on the last obstacle he faced. Izuku kept having to restart each time a falling rock hit him on the shoulder. By the 4th attempt on the first day, neither could finish their final obstacle without going beyond their limits. At the start of the second day, Izuku made a breakthrough with overdrive. As long as he made sure he was drinking plenty of electrolytes, he could use it without stopping. This made the green-haired boy's life easier since he could move at his fastest speed. It also allowed him a greater degree of maneuverability, helping him avoid the obstacles. Ida learned that as long as he was careful about how he used Reciproburst, he could dodge most of the obstacles. Without One for All being activated, the technique didn't seem to overheat his engines. He also seemed to consume less fuel because of the enhancement One for All naturally provided his quirk. As the sun started to set, Aizawa called them over to him. He congratulated the students for their hard work. At that moment, an explosion on the ground went off, forcing everyone to scatter. After that, more explosions went off, forcing everyone to separate even more. The Emerald Eye Boy ended up running towards another mountain. He grew concerned as he remembered who liked to walk up the mountain. As Borealis ran towards the mountain, he hoped that the young boy had decided to stay with his Aunt Mandalay. Near the top of the mountain stood a young boy with a red hat, with 2 yellow horns on it. A hooded figure approached him from behind and said, "Nice hat, kid. You're not one of those hero kids, so if you give me your hat and run away, you'll live." The small kid turned around and started to freak out. The man responsible for killing his parents was standing in front of him. Fear paralyzed the child, so he was unable to run. "So you've chosen to fight me. Then let's have some fun," the cloaked figure said, as muscle fibers started to form around the wrists of the man. The man raised his right arm out of his cloak. The arm was covered in poorly organized muscle fibers. The man leapt at the boy and started to throw a straight right punch at the young boy. For a brief moment, thunder could be heard coming from the area around the top of the mountain. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer of this video and editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Have a fantastic day.